Okay, so we are live and we are just accepting in a variety of attendees. The numbers are going up very, very quickly, actually. This is very good. It looks like we've got lots of fabulous attendees joining us. If you are just logging in to this webinar, thank you very, very much for joining us. My name is Chris Howard. I'm the Marketing Director here at Lace Partners, and I'm going to let Emma introduce the people that you should be seeing on your screen at the moment. We've got 4 of us that are speaking today, and myself as the voice of God, just doing a bit of the general housekeeping. But just to make sure that we aren't just talking into a void, because nobody wants that, could I get you all to use your chat functionality, please, today? So at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a chat functionality. It will give you a variety of different things. Just say, I can hear you. You can tell me what your favorite day of the week is. So somebody tell me what their favorite day of the week is, please. Friday, of course, Jodie, of course it's Friday. Ian's saying it's, did someone say Monday? Can't be.
Monday's
Can't be. Crazy. We'll ask our panelists in a minute. I think we'll do that as the open, but Safna said Wednesday. Oh, Wednesday's all right. It's the middle of the week, so we can get through that. I think we know now then that we are live, which is excellent. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's Chris Howard here from Lace Partners. I'm going to hand across to Emma Leonis, who's going to steer this ship. Welcome to the webinar. You've all used the chat functionality. That's absolutely brilliant. Today's webinar is going to last just about an hour. We will have time for Q&As at the end, and we've already had a couple of people that have given their Q&As, and there are some poll questions as well. So when the poll questions come up, please feel free to answer those. And yeah, it would be good to get some thoughts and insights. But that's enough of me talking for one day. I shall hand over. Well, I might be back at the end. You never know. It depends if Emma lets me, but I shall hand across to Emma, who is going to steer us on this this webinar today, which is on the future of HR shared services, becoming people and solution experts. Emma, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and wonderful to see so many people on today's call, be it lunchtime, be it morning or afternoon, because I think we've probably got some international people as well on the phone. So thank you so much for joining us today. As Chris has said, we are very excited today to be able to share with you a bit of a deeper dive into some recent research and thought leadership that we've published around the future of HR shared services, which is entitled Becoming People Experience and Solutions. Deliberately so, in that we want to be a little bit bolder. I think really resonates a little bit more with perhaps the change in the role that we're seeing of shared services, but we'll come on to that in due course. So as I say, thank you for joining us. I'm Emma Leonis. I will welcome our speakers in just a second. But I just wanted to also say that if you've got questions as we go through, please feel free to put them in the chat. If we can, we'll address them as we go through. If not, we will make sure that we have time at the end to take a selection of them. And if there's so many that we can't cover them all, we may well do a little blog or some kind of Q&A type thing afterwards that we can share with everyone online. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking in a second, but I just wanted to welcome our 3 guest speakers today, each of whom participated very kindly in the research that we're going to talk about. So first of all, welcome to Anat Marcus. She joins us from AkzoNobel, where she is the Global HR Operations Director. So AkzoNobel, very global organisation, I think over 50 countries, something like that, Anat, 30-odd thousand employees, and your responsibility is really broad, all HR service delivery, including kind of the business partners, the regional COEs, the country HR managers, and then the people services team as well. So thank you very much for joining us today, Anat. Then we have Lisa Dennis, who joins us from SPX Flow. Lisa's got a really interesting background, a mix of finance and HR, which is not that common necessarily in the kind of HR leadership world. So started her career in the finance shared service space, was at ExxonMobil before joining SPX Flow. SPX Flow, another really big global organisation, 36 countries, I think, something like that, Lisa, 6,000 employees. So it'll be really interesting to hear insights from yourself today. And thank you for joining us. And then last but by no means least, Andrew Hall. So Andrew is from Philip Morris International, or PMI for short. I know Andrew from many years ago. Used to be a colleague of mine when I was at Deloitte. So he's a friendly face today on the call. And I know you're really passionate about employee experience, Andrew, from some of the conversations that we've had today. Philip Morris, really global organisation, 90 different countries, 70,000 employees, and hopefully a lot that we can talk around, perhaps the experience element together today. So thank you all for joining. What I will now do is I'll just share my screen to give a little bit of background to the research that we conducted before we go into detail. Those of you joining, you have to bear with me as I'm not the best when it comes to multi-sharing screens, as I am only working off of one screen. So I guess the question really is, why did we decide to do this research and why do it now? So we've seen organisations on the shared service journey for 20, 25 years. You know, the concept isn't necessarily anything new. A lot of the time that's been around perhaps cost optimisation. But we are seeing, I think, more and more an increasing realization that that is not necessarily the only way of doing things and not necessarily the sole mandate of shared services, particularly thinking about employee experience, an increasing realization and recognition, I think, at the leadership level of businesses, that if you look at that, that hopefully drives increased engagement, hopefully then drives increased productivity, which clearly is a big, big benefit. So I guess for me, it was a question of, well, if that's what we're now seeing in the market, what are organizations doing? There isn't necessarily a lot of research out there specific to HR. There's quite a bit, you know, overall for shared services. But as part of our HR on the Offensive campaign, we were really keen to just explore what organizations were doing today and what can we perhaps learn from marketing and customer services, for example, in those organizations, and what might the future hold? And also more perhaps from a personal level for me, but we'll talk about that today with our guest speakers. I still think there is a bit of a perception that shared services is just there behind the scenes to do what it's asked to do and not necessarily to really push boundaries and strive to continuously do more. And I fundamentally disagree with that. And it is something we talked about in the research that we did as part of this white paper. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that today and our kind of ambition. But we spoke to 25 different global organizations. Obviously, the three speakers that we have today were all part of that. And, you know, just from those three organizations, real breadth in terms of geographical spread, the size of the organizations, the participants range from 1,500 employees all the way up to 100,000, all on different transformation journeys, mix of financial services and private sector. So hopefully a really nice range. Thinking about those of you who are joining us today, if you've read the report, or obviously this might be the first time you're hearing some of the findings, hopefully some things that will resonate with you no matter where you are on your journey. So without further ado, I would love to just start by asking each of our panelists to share a little bit more about their current context. Sort of, you know, what are you doing right now in the shared service world? What role does shared services play? What are some of your priorities? So perhaps Anat, if we could start with yourself.
Okay, so hello everybody, happy to be on the call today. You can see in the background a beautiful, colorful map. AkzoNobel is a company that produces paints and coatings, so hopefully we are inspired by the colorful world around us. So just like my colleagues on the call and probably many of you, we are on a transformation journey. And as a company, but also as an HR function, as a global business support function, which I will explain a little bit in a minute, we are moving from a company that used to be very locally, with a lot of local presence and a lot of local operations, to a much more robust global organization with many more standard processes and standard experiences. And we started that a few years ago, and we formed in AkzoNobel Global Business Services, which is the organization that hosts all the business services for all the functions. And we have a people services pillar that is managed and led by my colleague Koen Strook, and works extremely closely with HR operations, hand in hand, co-leading the efforts to drive performance excellence in HR. So great journey. We'll share a lot more as we continue to talk about the details of where we are. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Anat. And then maybe Lisa?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Emma, for the introduction. So SPX Flow large global footprint, but actually very small pockets of employees with different needs. So for me, we're a manufacturing company. So we have a lot of shop floor employees, but then we also have specialists in terms of project managers and things like that. So very, very different needs in very small pockets in a lot of different locations. And I think that's the biggest challenge for us from a shared service point of view, in terms of standardizing and aligning, but also making sure that we understand culturally what, the moments that matter, what matters in each of the different areas as well. So quite a blend to get our heads around. We've been on a journey for the last, I'd say, 18 months. We conversely to Anna, we moved out of global business services and into functions. So we report into CHRO, so we're in the HR function. And really, for us, it's trying to understand. We'll talk about it later, but it's the grey areas between COE, between HR shared services, between the business partners, and trying to bridge the gap between them and understand where we can add value for each of those parts of it, where we add value and where we need to collaborate. I think for us, our current thought is very much from the white paper. What's in a name? How do we position ourselves? We've come on a journey. We've got ourselves integrated, and now how do we move that on and really push forward?
Thank you very much, Lisa. And then Andrew.
So thanks, Emma, for the invite today. It's great to be able to talk to everyone. So similar themes to Anat and Lisa, what aren't we trying to do at PMI from an HR transformation perspective? I think we're looking at all of the pillars that come out in the report, from trying to advance the mandate for HR operations, or as we call it, P&C operations, trying to infuse the function with employee experience and insights, drive a digital mandate, and drive kind of employee centricity at the core of service delivery and our technology. But I think what's interesting from our perspective is we're on this journey and we're in the midst of COVID at this time, and how do we drive a transformation at pace from operations as the team are dealing with COVID as well. And it's a really fine balance for us at the moment. How fast can we go, and how fast can the business accept some of that change as well?
Thank you, Andrew. And I think perhaps as we talk more, we might kind of explore some of that, running the business, managing the business, and transforming, and also adapting to kind of that new way of working as well together. So I'm really interested to just sort of understand, perhaps as part of the context piece, whether the three of you feel that shared services in general, not necessarily within your organisations, but in general might be misunderstood a little bit. Lisa, you touched on there, one of the chapters in the report is the first one, the what's in a name, everything kind of piece. And whether you agree with my feeling, which is that actually sometimes we are just seen as just doing the basics, and there is an opportunity to be so much more. Just whether that resonates with you.
Yeah, I think so. I think that what's in a name question is really important. HR shared services, or shared services in general, as you said, I've come from the finance side. I'm accounts payable, which is the black sheep of the finance community. So I get it. I think that shared services feels very impersonal as a term, and also carries with it a lot of baggage from when it, years ago when we first started with shared services. I think I've had a conversation this morning actually in terms of even just the term administration and what comes along with administration. I think that shared services as a concept people have in their head as it being faceless. We're always going to. I think it's not where we're going personally, but I think that there's always that feeling that it's a faceless organisation, and we're always trying to put another barrier in. Is it going to be a ticketing system? Is it going to be you can't call us anymore? Is it those kind of things? And I think that that sort of legacy of the original shared services model really does still follow us around, and it's trying to sort of step away from that and encourage people to have that dialogue, collaborate, and really move forward and away from that baggage.
I've seen lots of nods from both Anna and Andrew, so welcome any builds from the two of you.
Yeah, so, I can add.
Go on, Anna.
Okay. Next time you go first, okay? We have to coordinate and work better on our process flows. What we experience is also on top of what Lisa mentioned. First of all, we do have the split between global business services and HR, and that identity question of where do you belong and how can you belong, to a function, but also to a professional service delivery function, and then also we'll talk about more about development opportunities. But this also creates a complexity about what you're called and who you are and what you're part of. My approach is, to be honest, and I lead global HR operations, and even though again people services reports directly to global business services and dotted line to me, we constantly define that this is one team. Okay, even the budget is within HR, so we own the budget, we own the resources. And the reporting line doesn't matter. It matters to an extent. I think we're trying to get the best of both worlds. So have a function that is best at service delivery, but also have the function with our processes and ways of working, representing people services. We do call ourselves people services, not shared services, and I think that also, to the name, I like it much better personally. Also putting people at the center and then pivoting, how we are perceived and what we do and how we do it. Maybe a small step towards that as well. I think I'll hand it over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Anat. So just to build on that, because as part of our transformation, we are going to rebrand ourselves from what is today kind of people and culture operations, and we will move to product and experience delivery. And the rationale for that is very much about perception, but also to give the whole function a sense that something is changing in what used to be operations. I think the other thing that I'd maybe reflect on is, as we've talked about maybe what the role of product and experience delivery could be in future, far from business partners and COEs being unsupportive of the increase in mandate, what we're actually seeing is they would welcome it. But the challenge we have is a trust one. Because it's not been done before. How do you build that credibility to start pushing up the value chain and starting to deliver some of those services that aren't traditionally associated with operations? And that I think is going to be a real challenge for a lot of firms and functions that try and go through this change.
Well, great, thank you all. And I think, Andrew, on your point around that trust and building credibility, perhaps we'll pick up on that when we talk about the evolving role of shared services potentially into more of a business or people manager advisor, what that means then when working with the business partners as well. And Anna, your point around, I guess in some ways obsessing about reporting lines, sometimes we do that. And actually it doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't matter. It's let's work together, let's get this done, let's get the right outcomes for our employees, our line managers and our business leaders.
Yeah, because I think if we do really put the employee at the center or the manager at the center, the employee couldn't care less who reports to who, and whether it's part of this organization or that organization. They also couldn't care less about what we are called. They care about the feeling. They want a seamless service and experience. They want to feel cared for. They want the turnaround, the SLA, etc., etc. So I think we are more caught up with it than our stakeholders and customers. So it's good to put on their hats and kind of let go of those definitions and also realize that there's nothing, not just about reporting lines, but in general, there is no black and white. There are so many shades in the middle. And as much as we want to provide, clarity about where the HR business partner role ends and the people service advisor begins, and where is the handshakes and who does what, unless we have that feeling of joint ownership, we're never going to get it right, exactly to the right shade of that gray. So it starts with the mindset that we should care together for our employees and managers and make sure that we each do our part to give a great experience.
Absolutely agree, Anat. And this is a really nice segue, I think, into maybe how we start to reposition ourselves. So you'll see throughout our discussion today, there are a couple of quotes from the report. Hopefully they're just to sort of resonate maybe with what people might be thinking. But the title of the report is Becoming People, Experience and Solutions. And, you know, this is about moving from shared services to perhaps being something else that more embodies our ambition, the role that we're now starting to play and where we want to get to. We're not saying that this is about, you know, making a name change for the sake of it at all. Actually, far from that. If you're going to change your name, even to just from HR shared services to people services, you know, that is symbolizing a change of your ambition, and it means you probably need to change your substance too. So what you do, how you do that, and capabilities. But in the report, you know, we talk about the concept of becoming people, experience and solutions. So really being at the heart of the people experience and starting to design things from an end-to-end point of view, taking that more holistic approach, connected HR services, looking at the experience across all the different kind of persona groups. Sometimes we just focus on employees, but what about people managers? Also, what about the business leaders? That they all need service delivery that's right for them, that supports their outcomes. And we need to make sure we have that holistic view and keep bringing the outside in as well, which again goes back to those kind of feedback loops and that end-to-end perspective. And what I'm hoping that we can do over the next sort of 40 minutes or so is start to explore some of the characteristics around perhaps becoming more of a people experience and solutions driven organisation, or, you know, for example, as you said, Andrew, you know, we're being more that product driven organisation as well, and that delivery piece. So Hello Business Advisor, Goodbye Business Partner. This is one of the chapters in the report, which is really around, I guess, starting to see a shift in the role, and we've started to talk about it together actually now, from just being perhaps a tier 1, tier 2 type capability to actually really bringing insights and detailed strategic advisory capabilities within the shared service world, and starting to perhaps become more of that people manager and coach. So as we digitize more, and that doesn't necessarily mean investing in lots and lots of new things, that might mean actually optimizing what you've already got. But as we start to try and digitize more, we streamline our processes more, it gives us more capacity. We know we have the ambition to do more, and therefore we can start, I think, making some of those shifts. And some of the organizations in the research had actually created dedicated people advisory teams, in the sense of people manager advisory. So not just how do I from an employee side, but that more specialist coaching that's required on a day-to-day basis with line managers who might never have had to deal with a grievance or a death in service or, you know, disciplinary, that type of thing, for example. Also seeing solution specialists, so some talent scouts and engagement managers in 1 or 2 organizations in the shared service world, project and change managers. One of the organizations that I spoke to had a dedicated project consultant pool that sat within shared services to drive the change. And also some organizations really starting to up the ante when it comes to insights, reporting and analytical insights. Sometimes that's a dedicated COE across the enterprise. Other times, actually, what we saw in the research was that shared services were starting to play more of that role too. And I'm hoping that in a second we can perhaps explore some of these new capabilities together, because when we had the conversations, I was really keen to just sort of stress test, I guess, what really is important in terms of helping us evolve our role. Is it the traditional service excellence, operational excellence piece, or actually is it more of these softer skills? And what was really interesting was I asked an other bucket, and these are sort of the 6 kind of key things that really came out of the other types of capabilities that people felt were really key to success if we start to uplift our role. So coaching, relationship management, emotional intelligence, I think that plays very nicely to that people manager advisory type capability, and also the piece around putting yourself in the employee's shoes from an experience side. And that helps us then, as you'll see on the right-hand side, start to perhaps challenge what might typically sit in the generalist role as business partners, which is the piece below the line, the dotted line there, you know, that management coaching and the generalist HR support. So I'm really interested, Andrew, Anat and Lisa, in terms of, you know, your experience and again, what you're doing right now. How maybe are you focusing on capability development? How are you starting to see some of the shift in that piece, and also build the trust, if we perhaps pick up on that as well? So maybe Andrew, if I start with yourself.
I think what we're trying to do, Emma, is I think we're trying to work out what could go into that kind of product and experience delivery organization in future. And and then start to build the capabilities required around that. And I think if you'd have asked this question kind of pre-COVID, we'd be assuming that you had to centralize all this activity into a Krakow or Manila. I think now maybe we're thinking slightly differently about talent. I think we've not pivoted, but we're starting to think differently about how you could build that virtual capability to start to provide some of those services. And as we go into kind of delivering our model next year, it's going to be really interesting to see how that comes together, but also how we establish some of those quicker wins with the teams who've maybe been doing that activity before. If I think of a business partner who's, you know, traditionally delivered the advice and guidance, the disciplinary grievance support, how are they going to feel about them still being the name in the market or the name in the country that's responsible for that service, but it's delivered by another part of the organization? I think that's going to be interesting, but equally, I think the point that Anat, you were making, we all work for the same function. So how do we get them to just see it as an extension of the single team? So I think that's going to be some of the interesting elements that we're going to go through, Emma.
Thank you, Andrew. And Lisa, maybe from your point of view.
Yeah, I think and there's a question in the chat actually that was about how do you work with career progression?
Yeah.
And things like that, which I think fits nicely in with this question. I agree in terms of the credibility and trying to just get everybody, you know, we're all in the same, we're going in the same direction. I think one of the things that as SPX we've done is the functional goals for HR are tied to shared services, and so you know we've all got to work together, both from a manager coaching point of view, but also getting work into shared services in order to achieve that functional goal. And, you know, we're bonused on it. So, you know, it's quite a tangible way of getting everyone moving in the same direction. I think something that we've been trying to do is we've been trying to bring into the shared service centre a broader scope, I guess. So the project management, for example, sits within our shared service centre. If HR wants a project, regardless of how big or small, then it's going to come through us, and so that gives us another way of making sure everyone's in the same, you know, talking about the same thing, and we've all got the same priorities. You know, we can have a list of 20 things. And as an individual business partner or someone in the COE, you might have you think it's a priority, but actually from a wider point of view, you know, we've got that end-to-end view of all those projects and transformations that are happening. So that's really important. And I think also having that centralized technology and project roadmap within shared services, it gives the shared service team a lot more scope to get involved in things that they never would have done before. So, you know, we, as a shared service centre, we might have 10 countries in full scope, and we might look at some of them, you know, separately. But if we're going to do a global payroll rollout, we're going to do it for all countries. And that means that the shared service centre is getting involved in all different aspects of the business. And I think that's really important for helping develop those skills that we will need going forward. Because as you say, you know, we're going to start digging away at the chatbots and things like that, and you know, automating more, document management, all those things, and where you hire administrators at the beginning because that's what you need. You certainly need someone with customer service skills, with the appreciation of the importance of I've not been paid right, and I think from a payroll point of view, we certainly have that relationship with employees. You know, we have to talk to them about all sorts of issues, and it's so personal. Your pay slip, and whether that's right or wrong, is the most personal thing, basically. Or helping someone through a maternity leave plan, something like that. It's not something that we're labeling as a service, but it's something that we're absolutely doing. And the guys that sit, you know, and do that payroll, they're not just administrators. They have to be able to talk employees through some very difficult conversations, actually, that the HR business partners may not understand because they don't fully understand the tax, or, you know, those kind of things. So there's such a grey area between the two. And I think actually to just have that sort of payroll service in a service list is a bit misleading. Because actually they have to have those skills to talk to people. So I think there's a lot of, certainly for us, rebranding to do around that. But I think there's definitely a lot of scope for building those skills that we're going to need in the future by bringing some of those little things in.
And Anna, from your point of view, you know, thinking about building these new skills and career paths, how do you see, people services? Is it a destination grade for talent? Is it an entry grade? What's your view on that?
I think, and also to build on what Lisa said, first of all, it's an evolution. It's not going to be a revolution. I think our first priority is to get the basics first, because unless we get, the payroll right or the basic services right, nobody is going to want to listen to us talk about, anything else. So first, let's acknowledge that if the services that we own under people services, we need to deliver great. And we still have a lot to grow, and I know many organizations also do. The other thing is that let's also agree that there is plenty of work in HR for all of us. So I don't think, we are going to, worry that we don't have enough to do. And we also recently, we are running a very big program for which we're calling a Track to Grow improvement. We rolled out, the big technology rollout a couple of years ago, and we are now really improving the process, the experience, the KPIs, and we were looking for a project manager. We started with somebody from a COE, and then they had to leave, do something else, and somebody from people services stepped out. For not even for 1 second, my mind was going, no, people services, no, not at all. This was about a capability, that's a talent that somebody has, capabilities, experience, opportunity to run a global program, actually from Shanghai, China. And it is about a variety of people. We do have entry-level positions, but then we have more senior and experts and payroll experts and continuous improvement experts. So I think it's a mix of talent, and we also want to make sure that that within that mix, people see themselves grow and develop to different disciplines and with the different opportunities to either become an expert somewhere or run a program or just continuously improve our process and experience. So a diversity of capabilities and a mix of seniority.
Great, thank you, Anat. So I'm going to just move us on maybe to think about service delivery and how those services are delivered and how we work with other parts of HR and the rest of the business. So one of the things that we talked about sort of earlier on was this shift to focus more on perhaps experience and thinking customer first. And a lot of organizations will be thinking about the moments that matter and perhaps getting focus groups together to identify those, thinking about ways that they can continuously improve, and particularly when it comes to service delivery. And one of the things that came through the conversations that we had as we were doing the research was very much this concept of contact your way. So lots of different ways that you can potentially deliver services today. A number of them are shown here, as you'll see. Everyone really as individuals will have their own preference as to how they want to contact organizations externally. As customers, how do we engage? Do we, like when we've got an issue, do we pick up the phone? Do we use the chatbot that might be available on their webpage? Do we look at their FAQs, etc.? Or do we email? Also, clearly, we've got demographics, wide variety of demographics and individuals now in the workforce. So lots of factors at play when it comes to maybe understanding what the right channel strategy could be for service delivery. And you'll see here, this is a representation of the outcome of the conversations I had when I asked, so how do you offer your services today? Not surprising to see perhaps email high. Unfortunately, I still think we're struggling to stop that one. There is a recognition that I think all of us want to try and move away from email wherever we can, because it's just so difficult to track it, because it's very manual to then track that. And still this increased push towards kind of tier 0 or more of that self-service piece. But I'm very interested just to sort of explore this concept of contact your way, because clearly what this is showing is that there isn't, a preference for one channel above all the others. And I'm interested to just explore that together and understand what that might mean in your context. What are you looking at? Are you looking at shutting down certain channels? How might you be delivering perhaps that personal service, but in a more standardized way? So maybe, Lisa, I'll start with yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I think, I mean, I agree on the email. And I think when we spoke on the conference last week, it was the same, you know, email is just the bane of everyone's life. You can't track it. And it's not very personal either. So, you know, it doesn't serve either purpose. I think for us, there's that desire to move away from the facelessness of the ticketing system. And as I referred to earlier, that baggage of shared services. Tickets are great if you need to report on something or need an audit trail. It's just something you need us to do. But what we find is that, you know, we have manager self-service, we have employee self-service. But what comes along with that is then the need to coach and to train and to do all of that bit as well. You can't have one without the other. And I think that certainly for us, we had manager self-service in place for quite some time. But what we didn't have then was that sort of tier 2 coaching and training for managers, and that, you know, so they're sort of left abandoned with an HR business partner that also might not have done it for quite some time in the system themselves. So I think you have to have both. And something that we're really trying to push is that if we can get a manager on the phone and share screens and walk through it, we won't need to speak to them again for a while. They'll get the right behaviors, they'll understand, and they'll also know that they can call us any other time. And just to build, again, it's that credibility, it's that trust. I think sometimes if you throw something into a ticket system, you don't know how to get the updates, you know, and it just, it feels like you're contacting, you know, British Gas or the council, you know, where the red phone rings and no one ever answers. It's that kind of thing. So certainly, I think you need both. You need the ability to coach managers and build that trust with them, that they can contact you whenever. That's absolutely fine. I want everybody to know each team member's name so they can just contact them if, you know, if they're online. But I like the tickets. I want to be able to report. I think I'm going to be the opposite of Andrew in terms of metrics, because we're not there yet in terms of our reporting. I know you said you had data coming out of your ears when we spoke before, so you know we're not there yet. But it's certainly both of those things. It's got to be easy, but we've also got to be able to provide that support and make sure people know that they can get that support from us.
Absolutely agree. And I think perhaps if we continue the conversation, maybe linking to sort of metrics and sort of that service delivery piece, one of the things, again, that we explore in the report is how are organisations like yourselves actually starting to measure what success looks like. So we'll do a brief poll in a second, and I think this is quite nice just when thinking about channels, contact your way, end-to-end employee experience delivery. So one of the questions was very, very straightforward, which is, do you measure service effectiveness, and if so, how? So as you'll see here, perhaps unsurprisingly, most organisations that we spoke to do measure service effectiveness. You would expect that. The 68% is slightly lower than maybe almost 100%, purely because the majority that said they weren't yet was because they were in the process of actually building their scorecards. There was actually only one organisation that had made that conscious choice to move away from formal tracking. They'd done it before, they'd had clear KPIs, etc., but they'd found that was at the detriment of the experience they wanted to deliver, because people felt they had to hit that KPI. And if that meant that they had to hit it and therefore they just said, sorry, goodbye, to your point, Lisa, about taking the time to walk people through screens, then unfortunately that would have had a detrimental impact on the outcome they were looking to achieve. But we talk a lot about employee experience really being important, and I think pretty much what came through from the report was it's our North Star. It's one of the key reasons now why we're existing, why we want to focus on things. But less than half of the organisations in our research actually formally measured experience. So what we'd be really interested to do now is a very quick poll of our attendees today on the webinar, just to ask the same question, and then perhaps explore collectively whether that surprises you in terms of what the 150 odd people who are joining us today said, and then also, again, how perhaps you're gathering some of that feedback today.
Okay, so this is the bit where Emma hands over to me, voice of God here, and I'm going to launch the poll now. We'll normally give it about 45 seconds, so you should be seeing it on your screen at the moment. We'll give it about a minute. How do you measure service effectiveness. So place your voting now. We aren't sophisticated enough to have any kind of fancy music, so there won't be any kind of countdown music, I'm afraid. And I'm not going to sing because nobody needs that in their life. That is for sure. So we've got the votes coming in, so keep your voting going. It's great. We've seen plenty of people voting, which is great. We're up to 77 out of 149. Splendid stuff. Are we going to get it better than an American voting turnout, percentage-wise? That's right. I've just gone political, and that's the moment in which I stop. We've just got 15 seconds, 10 seconds. Just as a quick reminder to everybody, there is a quick Q&A at the end. We've had lots and lots of questions come in. We'll try and get through to as many questions as we possibly can. For any questions that we don't answer, what we do, if you haven't dialed into one of our webinars before, is we tend to put together a document afterwards which tries to answer all of the questions, so we do get around to them afterwards as well, and we'll circulate that to all of our panelists too, so that they can have an input themselves. It's the Q&A function on the Zoom webinar to actually access that. So I will end the polling now, and hopefully people will be able to see it on their screen. Ems, hopefully you can see. Oh, no, I've got to share the results. There we go.
Yeah, and Chris, just so you know that we have someone from America on the chat there. So,
so I've already got somebody shouting and screaming into their Zoom. I do apologize. You've probably heard enough election talk over there in the States, so I do apologize. Please, 1,000 pardons. Ems, if you want to just read out the results.
Yeah, of course, of course. So actually mirrors, I think, what we also found in our research. So the majority still being the operational measures piece, over half, bang on 50%, and then followed by experience measures after that, a couple of others, and then we haven't yet got a formal performance scorecard in place. So quite nice to see, I guess, that's fully representative therefore, which is really interesting. But I guess the question is, so what with that? One of the questions in the Q&A chat is, what are some of the most common employee experience measures used? Now, that might be that you're formally tracking it, or it might be that it's informal. It might be that you get together focus groups. So again, just interested briefly to explore that together. So perhaps Andrew, because I know this is something that you've spent quite a bit of time looking at.
Yeah, over the last year or so, we've expanded our experience measures through an EMPS system, and we've done that across the moments that matter. So as people go through those life cycles, we're regularly measuring them to understand what sentiment and feedback is, so we can track it through the journey. But also within service interactions, we put an EMPS measure at the end of every interaction, and then followed that up with callbacks to both promoters and detractors. And it's been amazing in the amount of insight and data that we've got. I think we were pleasantly surprised about where the EMPS was coming out. What the really interesting learning has been is, though, what do the teams do with that insight? Because it's great to give them a set of EMPS measures and say, someone really likes your service or someone doesn't like the service. But how do they use that insight to drive continuous improvement from an operational standpoint or an experience standpoint? And that's something that we're continually having to work with the team at, to make them feel empowered to make some of the changes, but also to push changes up to whether it be a global process owner or a product owner.
Thank you, Andrew. And Anat, I can see you wanting to build on that, so go ahead.
I think that I want to share something that we are doing that I find very successful. We have a monthly operational KPI review, which includes the two global functions, so the HR operations with the head of people services, and then the regional, we have 5 of them because we are set up with 5 regions, and then the regional people services, the regional HR, the regional talent acquisition, and the regional, I think, rewards. And we've defined a set together that includes both process, experience, case management. I think we have extended it to an hour and a half every month. And instead of just having a dashboard, which you send over an email, and I don't know whoever looks at that dashboard, green, red, whatever, another one in your mailbox you're looking to file. We are actually having discussions about what the numbers tell us. And it's been a journey. We've been doing it already for the last 9 months. And the discussions became so meaningful and so insightful, because I keep telling them, I don't care about whether it's a 72 or an 82. I don't care about the number. Tell me what you learned. Share, observations. And then next month, we track all those insights, and next month we visit the insights to see if we made the changes and it already shows in the numbers. So my recommendation is to spend the time together as a team to view all the experience from the different perspectives and have a discussion around it. It does wonders to data, but also to your ability to improve and really focus on the right things. So really, really great experience that we're having around that.
Thank you, Anat. And I think it's a nice segue to a brief conversation perhaps about how you might be using technology to support with perhaps optimizing service delivery. I'm conscious that we probably need 2 hours on this next webinar. There's so much we could talk about. I'm looking at the time going, 13 minutes left. Okay, I've seen quite a few questions about metrics and things. In the report itself, there's a starter for 10 table as to other things that you could perhaps consider when it comes to experience measures as well. So things like just rating content, for example, is something that you want to do. I just want to very briefly, before we perhaps move into talking about the overall traits for success in the future, just briefly touch on this point around a lot of organizations are looking at their digital roadmaps. We explored that in the white paper as well. A lot of organizations in shared services have probably got strong foundations, may have implemented case management, might have some form of portal, etc. But as we look to continuously digitize, we've got to just strike that right balance between remaining human and thinking again about that personal experience and not just automating for the sake of automation. And I think really protecting those moments where human intervention makes the most sense. And I think one thing perhaps might be interesting to individuals on the call today is on the RPA point in particular, is something we've talked a lot about in HR, in finance, other functions for a number of years. This is at the bottom of the priority list. That might be because maybe some of the core platforms have taken some of the automation opportunities away. But I know a number of you from our conversations actually have looked at RPA and might be using that. So very briefly, before we perhaps think about the overall characteristics, I'd just be interested in, again, perhaps your perception around that RPA piece and any examples that you could share that might help others listening today.
Go on, I can go. So
go for it.
we've had a long hard look at RPA as a way of enabling standardization and cost saving. And I think what we found is that a lot of the use cases that you typically associate in payroll and maybe in TA are kind of dependent upon having that standardized process in place. It's very easy to put RPA in, but every time you change a process, if you've got 6 different iterations of it, that's 6 different changes to the robot. And so I think certainly from our perspective, we will use RPA for payroll, but only once we've got to standardized processes. Otherwise, the cost benefit just isn't there for you.
Yeah, and I think I'm in the same space as Andrew. So, we've been really setting the foundation in terms of getting everyone onto the same payroll provider, and all that stuff. And Andrew's right. You can't, if it's not the same across each platform, then a robot can't do it. So, we're still very much in that setting the groundwork. We're getting to the end of that journey, but then actually, I think it's probably we're past our RPA now. We'll be looking at the AI stuff and the people experience stuff rather than the RPA stuff.
The one area that I can say that we're using it successfully is because email is still a big channel for us, which makes it harder, to categorize and give service. So we have the robot based on some keywords within the document, within the email, do the initial, category of the request or inquiry. So instead of somebody having to go through all the email, the robot does it first, and then and then the initial at least analysis is being done. So that's working out pretty nice, and the robot, they learn. So the more and more emails and experience they get better at what they do. And we're also looking at implementing an employment certificate process where you type in a few things and the robot pulls the data that they need from the systems and generates the letter. So it's a nice GBS organization. The GBS organization is investing pretty much because, again, that's where you get the benefits of belonging to a body that is really thinking service and service automation. And it's nice to see how it's evolving, and we are learning where's the best opportunities.
Thank you all. And I saw in the chat there was a question around roughly how many organisations in the participant research pool had changed their core platform over the past 5 years. You have to quote me on this and double check, but I think from memory it was roughly about 2/3 had made the move to cloud, and 1/3 were still on their journey to move to cloud from the 25 organisations that we spoke to. So just briefly to kind of conclude, I guess, we've talked about some of these characteristics today. These are the themes that really came through the conversations as to how we might start to evolve our role, reposition our value, etc. And I think it would be really interesting, Chris, just to briefly quickly put up the poll, just to see out of those 10 characteristics that are on the screen there, which ones really resonate the most with those on our webinar. And then I'll just ask participants for sort of final observations as we conclude.
Yep, the poll should be live.
It is, I can see, yeah.
Live voting, excellent. I've got from a first person. You don't get any prizes, unfortunately, for being the first person, other than me saying thank you. Thank you very much for voting. So we're going to make this a quick one because I'm conscious of time. So we're only going to probably give it just on that 1 minute. There is a feedback form that we've got at the end of this. If you'd like to give us your feedback, we're always looking at ways in which we can improve the way in which we deliver these, but also content-wise as well. If there's anything you want us to be talking about in future, we will be producing plenty of these webinars as we go out over time. But we've got about 10 seconds left, and then I'm going to end the polling with about 75 odd people have voted. So Ems, I will hand back to you in 3, 2, 1.
Yep, there we are. Okay, great. So the top one that came out, customer first, experience driven. Probably not a surprise, probably fair to say, from our conversations today, followed by business advisor, and then brilliant basics. Yeah, absolutely brilliant basics. I think, Anna, it was yourself who said it earlier on, but if you don't get that right, you just don't have credibility or really licensed to even ask to do anything more. The virtual networks piece, I know it's quite low, well, towards the bottom on the list, but I just wanted to briefly mention it because someone asked in the chat here, and I think we will, Chris, need to do a bit of a follow-up, which I'm happy to do, to answer some of these questions because there's a lot. But there was a question around, what do you see as the role of place in shared services? So does product and service delivery have to be centralized, or can it be run virtually? So maybe we just perhaps get some perspectives on that, and any final observations from the three of you around what you think is key for your success.
Yeah, I think I can start. I guess maybe if you'd have asked me before COVID, I'd have said something different. But certainly, I think COVID has shown that we can work anywhere and achieve anything. I mean, the teams have been. I wouldn't know. My team are mostly European nationals. They've all gone home. They're all working from their parents' houses in different places. I really don't think it matters anymore, actually, where you're located. And I think it's having it's the right person doing the right job at the right time, and that's what it is. I think from my point of view, very recently we've been able to actually move somebody from a business generalist role into shared services to do payroll and things like that. She's working out of Denmark. We've got people everywhere. My team are based in India, they're based in the UK, and they're based in the US. And it's the conversation is always where does it make sense for the work to sit? There was something in the chat just about my pockets of different employees everywhere, and does that make it difficult? Absolutely. It does, but the thing for me is it doesn't really matter whether someone's sat in Manchester or Pune in India or in Charlotte in the US, because it's the relationship with the business partner and the series to understand that local knowledge so that we can provide it, and we can provide it from anywhere. because realistically it doesn't actually matter as long as we've got that relationship, we've got that collaboration. I think, and my overriding point I've written in big letters on my notes for my summary is just, it's collaboration. And back to Anat's point, it literally doesn't matter who you're reporting into, or it's all about the value for the business. And it's that collaboration doesn't matter who does what, we're all going in the same direction, and we're aiming for the same thing.
Agree. Lots of nods from Anat and Andrew as well.
Couldn't agree more. I think that's the word to go with, or always is, ends up, if you collaborate, we're stronger together than individuals or specific functions. I think HR traditionally has a background of working in silos. We talk a lot about it, but at the end of the day, we're still, haven't been able to really, let's say, be excellent at how we bring it all together. My last thing to add is maybe a little bit about people services, shared services, feeling like the victims of the circumstances, and why are we, the ones getting stuck with the black work and the dirty stuff, whatever we call it. And I think we also, again, we need to go beyond that. This is, first of all, administration is not a dirty word. Somebody has to do it, and we all do it. To a certain extent, I also do a lot of manual work and administrative work, even if I'm a senior executive. So let's not get stuck in some perception that we are feeding more than anybody maybe is, when they're looking at us and somebody is calling us or asking for help. I don't think they have that. I'm calling an administrator. They're calling HR. They don't care who's answering the phone, as long as they get the answer. And the more we step up and we own that relationship and we own that experience, the greater we are. So don't get caught up in those definitions and maybe perceptions. Just take it, grab it, and then I think it will fly from there.
Thank you, Anat. And then Andrew, one kind of key takeaway and reflection from yourself based on your journey.
I think, first of all, kudos to anyone who's working in HR operations after this year. I think look at what we've achieved this year in those circumstances. I personally think kind of the genie is out of the bottle and anything is possible now because of the ways of working that we've demonstrated. I think, and I'm always the eternal optimist, but I'm kind of hoping with that kind of coming together of experience, the great capability that already exists in HR operations teams, and maybe the technology finally getting there. I don't think there's a more exciting time to be in operations from a career perspective, because I think the breadth of things that you're going to be able to get involved in and drive, I think is endless, and really optimistic about the next kind of 5 years of what that could look like.
Absolutely agree. And I think we actually end on the report with a nice kind of strap line around, let's be bold. There's so much opportunity for us. Let's grasp that. We've had to think on our feet. Let's keep that momentum going and keep challenging those perceptions. So we are bang on pretty much at the hour. So Chris, I think it's time for me to say a massive thank you to our speakers today. So to Anat, Andrew and Lisa. Thank you so much for participating in the research in the first place. Even more so for joining us today to share your thoughts. I think there's so many questions. We'll definitely need to do a bit of follow-up, I think, on those, which we're very, very happy to do. So thank you very much from me today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to
Emma.
everyone joining as well.
Thanks very much, guys. So just to reiterate, if you'd like to download the white paper, you can do so if you haven't already at lacepartners.co.uk/shared services. You can get access to the white paper there. There is a QR code that was on the end of this presentation. You can access that too by just doing that thing that we all do now when we go into, well, we used to go into restaurants and hold our phones up towards it. So just for a minute or so, we'll just hold that up so that if you wanted to access a copy of the white paper through the QR code, you can do it through this newfangled technology that we've all got used to during the COVID period. This has been recorded, so you will be able to watch this afterwards, and we have taken a note of all of the questions. So apologies to Nuria, Samiat, Leon, Mark, to second Mark, Anton, Michael, Hugh, Peter, Pratik and Andrea. We know you asked questions. I have have got them noted down, so we will go through those questions, and we will give a transcription of some of the answers of all of our attendees today as well. Ems, I think we've probably given them enough time, so thank you very much everyone for joining us, and hopefully we will see you all again next time. And thank you to the 4 of you guys for being the stars of the show.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.